Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'll be reviewing the Xero Shoes Glenn. So 3 pros that I have with the Glenn is number 1, I think this shoe looks pretty dang good. Now, I am not always the biggest fan of some of like the Hirashi inspired designs on some of Xero Shoes training shoes, but when it comes to a Xero shoe that looks pretty dang good for formal wear and more casual wear, I think the Glenn is a hit. It honestly has a really clean appearance to it, and it looks nice and subtle, which I personally love. So whether I was dressing this up or wearing them just out and about way more casually, the shoe looks pretty good. Also, I do like the overall upper construction because it's not so sheen to where it can be rocked a lot more casually and it doesn't necessarily shout like, hey, this is a formal wear dress shoe. So I think if you're on the market for a barefoot shoe that can be worn in a variety of settings that has a cleaner appearance, the Glenn can be a great option to explore. The second thing to like about this model is the nubuck leather. So with this leather upper here, it's water repellent, so it does a pretty good job in damp settings. So obviously you can't go puddle jumping in the shoe, but if you're wearing them for your commute or if you're wearing them in a setting where it's gonna be a little bit damp and it's rained and whatnot, the shoe should do a pretty good job at being naturally a little bit more water repellent than other barefoot shoes that you have to apply your own finish to. So overall, I have enjoyed the upper in the shoe and I found it to be pretty dang comfortable and it broke in pretty fast. Now I have read on Xero Shoes site that some folks have reported that the heel was pretty stiff. I don't necessarily think that's the case, and honestly, with a leather shoe, that's kind of to be expected to some degree, so you will have a break-in period, but overall, this shoe took about like 1 to 2 wears to really break in, and you can wear them sockless or with socks, and they feel pretty good, which I also really like because not every leather shoe you can wear sockless and have them feel pretty good. The third pro that I have with this model is that Xero Shoes use their Feel True sole in this shoe and has a removable insole with a finished internal construction. So generally speaking, the Feel True soles tend to last a while, so I do like that for long-term durability for the shoe, and they have a decent level of tread for different surfaces. Also, with this removable insole, you now get a little bit of variety of the cushion you get, so if you want to rock them with or without the insole, I like that because the internal finished construction isn't going to necessarily break down super fast in this model. But now let's talk about a couple of cons that I have with the Xero Shoes Glenn. So 2 cons that I have with the Xero Shoes Glenn is number 1, they might not deliver enough width for certain foot anatomies. So one of the things that I really like about the Xero Shoes Glenn and why I like them so much for more formal and casual wear is that they don't have a ton of width to where they're overly floppy or they look a little bit more clown-like. So for context, I typically have between like a D and E width foot for most companies' sizing charts, or I'm somewhere between like medium and wide regarding most companies' sizing charts. I think if you are a double E width foot or wider, this shoe might feel a little bit restrictive for you. These fit me pretty well and almost like a glove, and I do have enough width to really splay those toes, but I'm not swimming in this model. So while I think that's a good thing for certain foot anatomies, I think if you have exceptionally wide or notably wide feet at that, you might want to be careful when investing in the Xero Shoes Glenn because I'm not convinced you will have enough width for your anatomical ask, and you might want to look into other leather shoes on the market. The second con, which isn't necessarily a con against this shoe, but something that I could see bothering some folks, is that if you want a leather barefoot shoe that's going to have a little bit more sheen to it, that you can dress up in more formal wear settings, this might not be your best pick. With this shoe's nubuck leather, it has kind of like the more felt finish and feel to it, so it's not going to give you the most sheen. So if you do want a formal leather barefoot shoe that can be a little bit more shiny and look a little bit more traditional regarding its overall appearance when it comes to its sheen, this model might not be the best. Again, it's not really a knock against the shoe's overall performance, but if you decide to invest in the shoe, that is something that I think you should be conscious of just in case it doesn't align with what you're looking for. Overall though, I have really enjoyed the Xero Shoes Glenn, and honestly, this is one of the first Xero shoes that I've actually worn on multiple occasions out and about that I've actually gotten compliments on because they look so good and not necessarily like a traditional barefoot shoe, so I have really enjoyed that about this model. But now let's talk about the performance of this shoe. To discuss the performance of the Xero Shoes Glenn, I'll cover how the shoe performs for more walking and casual wear, and I'll talk about its all-season functionality, so can it be worn in every season. So when it comes to just daily wear, casual wear, more formal wear, I have really enjoyed this shoe. I like it for its appearance. It has a nice, clean appearance to it. There is very minimal branding. You only have Xero up here on the tongue and then back here on the heel, and you also have a nice level of articulation. So you do get a nice level of ground feel and flexibility out of this shoe, which is awesome. And I haven't had a ton of creasing up here at the toe box. Now, I'm sure as I wear this more, I will have more creasing, but thus far it's done a pretty good job at kind of like retaining its overall shape and structure, which I also really enjoy, especially for a leather shoe. Another thing that I like about this model is that you can take this insole out and you have a finished internal construction. So if you want a little bit more cushion, you can rock that insole, or if you want to get as close to the ground as possible and you are super minimalist with how you like your shoes to fit, then you could take that insole out and your shoe shouldn't break down super fast because that internal construction is finished. The last thing that I like about this model for its performance for daily wear is how easy you can dress the shoe up. All of the colorways for this model are pretty dang neutral, so I went the black and white colorway because you can kind of match that with a little bit of everything, to be quite honest. So I have thoroughly enjoyed that about this shoe, and I've liked that the width is more aligned for like a medium to wider foot versus super wide, which can sometimes feel a little bit swimmy for certain foot anatomies. Now that being said, if you do have, once again, that notably wide foot, you might want to pass on the shoe because I'm not convinced you'll have enough width in the toe box to make them comfortable. So where they are comfortable for my foot anatomy, it may not be the case for every foot anatomy, especially wider feet that are like double E width or more. When it comes to their all-season functionality, I do think this could be a good, viable 4-season shoe. Now, obviously with leather shoes, they can run a little bit hotter in like summer and spring when you're starting to have some of those warmer days, and even in the fall. But with this nubuck leather, it's not overly thick, so I do think if you wear some super thin no-show socks or even go barefoot in the shoe here and there, they can work on hotter days. And I think if you're just wearing the shoe, for example, to the office, I don't think that's going to be a huge concern. Plus, when it comes to winter wear, I think if you wear thicker socks as well, you'll have enough warmth with this leather to begin with because it is leather, it's a little bit thicker, there's less ventilation. So I do see this model as a viable all-season shoe, but like with most leather shoes, there could be certain contexts on really hot days where the shoe could run pretty warm, and you might want to be a little bit more conscious of your sock choice or opt for a different shoe at that. When it comes to the price of the Xero Shoes Glenn, you can expect to pay $129.99 USD for this shoe. I think if you compare that price point to other leather barefoot shoes on the market, it's kind of like right in the middle of the road. And I think if you're planning on getting this model and rotating in with other barefoot shoes for your daily wear context, you should get a nice long lifespan out of this model, and I could see their price being fair. Granted, if you could find them on sale, that would be a big win, so if you could knock down the price a little bit. But for $130 USD, I do think the Glenn is pretty fair for what it offers. All right, so now let's discuss who should invest in the Xero Shoes Glenn. I think if you're somebody who has a foot width between like D and E or even lower, I think you'll enjoy this shoe because I don't think you're going to be swimming in this model a ton, especially if you wear thinner socks. Also, I see this model as being a really good fit for somebody who wants a casual looking barefoot shoe that they can wear in a lot of different settings and dress them up or wear them out and about casually and have them look nice and refined. Now, who shouldn't invest in this shoe? I think if you're somebody who wants a barefoot shoe with more sheen, this model is not going to be your best bet. Also, if you do have a double E width foot or wider, this model might not be your best bet. And so that being said, if you do have an exceptionally wide foot and you do want to try this model, go for it, but just tread lightly because I do think this model will run a little bit more narrow compared to other models on the market that you might be more familiar with. So when it comes to the sizing in the Xero Shoes Glenn, I think if you have a narrow and medium or neutral width foot, you should be safe going true to size in this model. I think if you have a wide or an extra wide foot, you might want to go up a half size in this shoe. Currently right now I have about a half of inch of room at the end of my toe box. This shoe fits awesome for my foot anatomy, but I think if I had gone up a half size, that wouldn't have necessarily been a bad call and I would have still had plenty of security in the shoe. So I think if you're timid on getting enough room because you do have a wider foot, going up a half size in the Xero Shoes Glenn could be a really safe call. And then if you have a narrower foot width, going true to size should be a-okay. So when it comes to the weight, heel to toe drop, and insole in the Xero Shoes Glenn, for my size 10 model here, we have a weight of 11.25 ounces. Honestly, that's not too bad for a leather shoe. The heel to toe drop in this model is 0 millimeters. And then once again, we do have this thin foam removal insole, and we have a finished internal construction in this model. All right, so now let's break down the construction of the Xero Shoes Glenn. The upper of this model is made with this nubuck leather. It is extended throughout the entirety of the shoe. You have some double stitching here around the midfoot, and then you have 4 core eyelets that go up, and you have a thin leather tongue here. We do have a little bit of padding on that tongue, and the internal part of this shoe has a smoother finish, and then back here on the heel, you have more of like a suede / traditional leather feel to it. We do have an external heel tab here, and then once again, when it comes to branding, you have some Xero branding here on the tongue. I like that it's pretty dang minimalist in nature, and then you also have some Xero Shoes branding back here on the heel as well. Looking at the sole construction of this model, we have the Feel True sole in this shoe, so you do have a traditional tread that is similar to shoes like the Prio. Granted, the sole is a little bit different than that model, obviously, but the tread patterning remains the same. And then looking at the insole, once again, it is removable, so you can take this out, and you have a finished internal construction in this shoe. Overall though, that pretty much makes up the gist of this model's construction. It's pretty simplistic in nature, just like most leather shoes, but if you have additional questions on this model's construction, drop a comment down below. All right, y'all, that wraps up my review of the Xero Shoes Glenn. Overall, I've been really happy with this model, and honestly, it's one of the first Xero shoes where I've been like, dang, that's a pretty good looking shoe. If you have additional questions on the Glenn, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer, especially if you do have questions on sizing. I could send you a video of this model versus other shoes, so definitely feel free to reach out. But as always, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.